It is Inside the CMS Studio with me, Chris Aiken, and that, of course, was the Babies back on my feet again. And here's a guy that brought the Babies back on their feet again. It is one of the original members of the Babies. It is guitarist Wally Stocker. Wally, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you doing?
Excellent. Cannot complain. Well, Wally,
Good.
Gotta say, very happy to see that the Babies are back out again and touring. Obviously it's not new. It's, you guys have been doing it for a couple of years, or for a few years now, 3-4 years at this point, right?
Yeah, I think we're going into our fourth year now.
Okay, excellent. Now, are you surprised that there are people like me that were unaware? Now, as a big fan of the Babies back in the day, I was unaware until very recently that you guys were back. Are you surprised that it's taking, a little while for people to rediscover the band?
Yeah, I guess in a way. We kind of, being away that long, and coming back with a new lineup and, a new CD. I guess it's taken a while, probably longer than we thought, but, it's just a question of getting out there and playing and getting the name back out there. And, it would have been nice to had it taken off a little earlier, but things are starting to move, and we're having fun with it. So you got to sort of let it take its course.
Sure.
You can't really force it on people. So, we're getting all of our fans back from 30 years ago, plus a new generation of fans, kids that grew up in the house where their parents were playing Babies records and, turned their kids onto us. And so now we find ourselves playing to like two generations of Babies fans when we're out there doing shows,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, Wally, maybe you can help me solve this, or maybe you won't get this as much as I don't get this, but, I'm 47 years old, so my heyday of music was 78 to current, but I mean, my favorite time would have been like 78 to about 1990 is probably my favorite window. And that's sort of when you guys were in there as well. And that's certainly when you had your biggest hits.
Yes.
But you guys did not. It doesn't seem like the Babies. I mean, people certainly, they remember, Every Time I Think of You and Isn't the Time, and they remember the songs, but it's not like you guys got the Pink Floyd treatment from classic rock radio either, where classic rock, they picked 20 bands and yours wasn't one of them. Why do you think it is that classic rock stations, did not gravitate to the Babies, especially when you guys had so much success there for, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah. I don't really know, because there is a harder side to the band, other than songs like Isn't It Time and Every Time I Think of You. There's some more sort of aggressive side to the band, and always has been, as far as, being a rock band.
Right.
We just, we recorded those songs because we not only liked the songs, but we liked experimenting with strings and horns and things like that. The female singers, and it was a real sort of. It wasn't tunnel vision by any means. We were open to anything. If it sounded good on the track, then we would, put it in. And I think with those songs, maybe classic rock's kind of thought of us as a sort of more of a pop band, sort of walking that edge between sort of commercial pop and sort of commercial classic rock. And,
right.
By the time we got to the third album and we had Head First out, I think, classic rock stations were kind of picking up on that, and then later on with Midnight Rendezvous and Back on My Feet, and then I think they started to realize that, you know, we sort of did fit into that sort of classic rock scene, you know.
Sure, definitely. Now, Wally, let me ask you, and this is only because this is as fresh in my mind as it could possibly be. Last night, for whatever reason, I sat down in front of Netflix and I watched the Eagles documentary, which I don't know if you've seen or not. But it's this amazing look at one of the biggest bands in the history of the world, and how even with all the success in the world that they had, they still imploded. And
yeah,
and it was amazing to watch how much they really kind of were not having fun, even though they were wildly successful at the end. Now, I don't know the circumstances behind the Babies breakup, and you don't need to go into all that because that's obviously way old history. But I'm curious for you if it was a similar type of a thing where the success did not outweigh the individual problems within the band, which is why you moved on.
Well, you know, being in a band is like, you know, being married. It's
Right.
You know, you have your ups and downs and, you know, disagreements and, you know, it's, but that's something that all bands go through. You know, I couldn't name one band that hasn't had problems through their careers, you know, but, you know, I think there was, you know, some turmoil by the time we got to, you know, the fourth album, and actually when we were making the fifth album, On the Edge, I could sense that you know, there was some restless goings on, if you like, in the band, and some, you know, some people with some other ideas, and, you know, and sometimes it's just so hard to keep all that together and try and create new music together when, you know, not everybody is on the same page. And unfortunately, you know, that happened to us. I think had we continued on to make another record after On the Edge, I think it may have taken us over the edge, you know.
Right.
I think we were one record away from really, you know, sort of, like I say, you know, reaching, you know, the final goal that we were really aiming for from the very beginning. And unfortunately, it was kind of cut short, you know, and when it was all over, I felt kind of so empty. You know, we were almost there, and you know, certain as I say, you know, just people wanting to take different paths with their musical career, and you know, so it kind of all just sort of faded away and dissolved, and you know, everybody moved on to other things. But it was a shame because, you know, that was our band, and you know, it was our music, and you know, it was something that we created out of nothing, and it was a real shame to see it all just kind of disappear like that, you know.
Certainly. Well, moving forward to today, because obviously that period went away, and you did a lot of other cool stuff as well with Rod Stewart and Air Supply and a bunch of other bands. So it's not like you sat home on your couch for 30 years. You've been, you know, you've stayed busy and stayed in bigger bands. What was it that came about 3-4 years ago at this point where you were like, you know what, maybe it's time to put this back together again and see what could happen?
Yeah. Yeah, after the babies split up, I continued. Actually, I was in the Rod Stewart band, and of course, Tony Brock was in that band too.
Mm-hmm.
So him and I sort of, got to play together again for a little while I was in that band. And then I joined. I did a North American tour with Rod, and we did an album and a live album. And then Rod was changing his lineup, and so I started looking for something else, and ended up with Air Supply, who were they were going out on tour. They were going to the Far East, like Japan and Hong Kong, and so I joined Air Supply thinking that I was just going to be doing that tour, just as like a hired gun, if you like.
Sure.
And ended up being with them for like 3 years. And then I was in Humble Pie. Jerry Shirley put Humble Pie back together again with myself and Charlie Hewn, who's now the lead singer in Foghat.
Mm-hmm.
And we did, about 2.5, maybe 3 years with Humble Pie, and then I was, I wasn't doing anything for a while. I was doing some sessions and things like that, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I ended up moving to Florida, and but Tony and I keep in touch, we've always kept in touch. And I guess, probably like 5 years ago now, he called me up one day and said, listen, I'm thinking about, maybe, John Waite doesn't want to do it. And because we'd asked John a number of times whether he would be interested in, sort of getting back together again, on a sort of trial basis and see how it goes. And, he would always say, well, I'm happy doing my own thing, and I don't think I really want to get involved in a band situation again. So, we had to respect that. And so after a number of tries to try and convince him to maybe change his mind, like I say, Tony called me and he said, would you be interested in, us looking for a replacement for John Waite, and, maybe have another shot at it and put the band back together. And he said to me, I'm not going to do it unless you're fully committed, like 100%. He said, if you're not interested, he said, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to do it without you.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, yeah, I'm in. I'm in 100%. I'm fully committed if we can find the right singer,
Sure.
So, of course, Tony was in L.A., and I was in Florida, so he started to audition singers and went through a number of singers and kept sending me tapes and videos of these different singers. And then he called me and he said, I think I may have found the right guy, and I'm sending you, because what he had all these singers in his studio, and he was just playing the tracks and having them sing on, like his Net Time and Head First and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me it was John Bizarro and sent me all the details and the video, and I called him up and I said, I think we might be onto a winner here,
right,
with John. And they said, well, I'm going to bring him back a couple more times, and that's what happened. We were both really you know, because without that, there really wasn't any point in pursuing it, you know, if we couldn't find the right singer. And John was a fan from the old days anyway, which was really kind of exciting for us because, you know, he kind of knew the material and was a fan of the band, as opposed to a singer just coming in and going, well, you know, I'll sing for you, and, you know, what's in it for me kind of thing.
Right,
you know,
sure.
John really had the passion for the songs and for the band, and so you know, that's how we basically settled on John.
Okay.
And you know, to this day, I know that we made the right decision.
Sure. Was it instant, or let me rephrase this. How important was it getting to know him as a person versus just singing the songs? 'Cause clearly anybody with YouTube can find out that John Bazaha can sing the Baby songs as well as John Waite ever did. You know, he's just talented. But
Yes.
but all the talent in the world does not make a good bandmate, you know, and I have to think that when you go back and reform a band that's been broken up for a long time, such as the Babies were, that knowing that this guy was going to be a good guy might even have been more important than being able to sing note for note the old stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree on that. And he does, you know, he has the personality, and he's just, you know, he's one of the boys. He's you know, he's like, he's just so excited to be doing this, and but he's also a very good friend. You know, he's not just the singer in the band. He's like part of the family now, and you know, his character, you know, is very high, and you know, it's just a pleasure to be around, you know, as opposed to being around somebody who maybe can sing really, really good, and, you know, and pull it off as far as vocals, but, you know, off stage, maybe doesn't quite have the personality and the friendship to go with it, you know. Mm-hmm. But John does, and that was also, you know, one of the reasons that we chose him was, you know, that he is, you know, he feels like part of the family, and, you know, although I've only known him now for, you know, these 4 years, I feel like I've always known him, you know.
Right, certainly. Now, working with him, you guys actually put together a record, which is a very strong record. You know, I'll have some of that, which is, it feels like the Babies from old. I mean, you could certainly play it next to the old catalog, and nobody's going to be like, oh, that sounds completely different. But at the same time, at least in my ears, it's got a little bit more grit than I remember from, you know, at least from the first two records. You know, the third and fourth records had a little bit more of a rock edge. This sounds like it has a lot more of a rock edge. Is that because that's who you guys always were, or is that a little bit of what John brought in that was not there previously, or a little bit of both, or what?
Well, Tony and I have always had that rock edge to us, you know, but we never wanted to lose the sound that we had back in the old days, you know. That was the whole point of this. If we were going to bring back the band and obviously have to play, you know, the old catalog live, then we never wanted to change the sound of the band. You know, obviously we wanted to keep up with the times, but had we come back with a completely different sound and completely different approach to it, I don't think Tony or I would have been, you know, really, really happy with that kind of situation.
Sure.
And John, and of course John and Joey Sykes, you know, they brought in their passion for the music because they're both fans, and So as a team, as a band, when we made I'll Have Some of That, maybe some of that sort of rawness came out, as we were sort of creating the songs. But, they both knew that Tony and I never wanted to lose the sound of the Babies completely, and, wanted to incorporate the female, singers and strings and, but still had that rock edge to it. And, so now when we play live, we can do any song from our catalog because, we have a 7-piece now with keyboards and the 2 ladies on vocals, and we got an extra guitar as well now in Jerry Sykes, which we didn't have in the old days. If both Michael Colby and Jonathan Kane, they could both play guitar, but they were mainly keyboard players. So, I was kind of, if Michael or Jonathan was on the keyboard, then I was really the only guitar in the band, and I had to really stick to just rhythm playing more than, sort of branching out a bit. But now we have the benefit of Joey on second guitar and keyboards, which makes the sound even fuller and allows me to sort of step out and, improvise a little bit and not have to worry about, just keeping it strictly rhythm guitar. So that's a bonus in itself,
Certainly. Now, Wally, when you guys first started playing gigs in 2013, I believe it was, what was the audience like? Were they immediately receptive, or did they come in a little skeptical and you had to win them over each night, which made you have to play a little harder or better, or were they just automatically, all right, Babies are back?
Well, the very first gig that we did, when we sort of relaunched the band, was out in Calabasas in California, at the Canyon Club, and we actually did it as a benefit concert, so we wanted to sort of reintroduce the band, under that sort of, it's like we're back, but, we're going to make this a benefit concert. And, the turnout was just great. The place was packed. And, I think even we were taken back by the fact that everybody was just singing along. They knew every word to every song.
Great. And
that kind of, obviously after being away that long, we were a little tentative, to say the least, but halfway through the first song, I think the whole band realized that, hey, they hadn't forgotten us. They still remember the songs, and that made us feel so good. And pretty much every gig has been that way, even if people don't remember the Babies, they remember the songs,
Sure.
And so all in all, we've had a great reception wherever we've gone, and that makes us feel, more at ease, and we can enjoy ourselves more, when you're not sort of tense and wondering, well, how is this going to go down tonight, and,
Right.
and as soon as we start playing, it's just, it feels like one big party, I mean,
Right.
it's, if they see us enjoying ourselves, then they enjoy themselves, and vice versa,
Exactly. Certainly, man. Well, for people that are interested, they can go to thebabiesofficial.com and find out more about what's going on with the Babies. And there's Facebook and Twitter as well, which I believe are also The Babies Official. And Wally, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from their catalog to wrap this up. So what should we wrap the interview up with? And maybe tell us a quick story about it.
Oh, well, can we play a track from the new album?
Certainly.
Can we play the title track? I'll have some of that.
All right. Why that one?
Well, that one, Tony and I had the musical track for that many, many years ago. Tony used to have a studio down off of Wiltshire Boulevard there, and him and I would get together and just mess around and put tracks down, and so we had the musical side of I'll have some of that, and of course it wasn't called that at the time, and I was, when Tony wanted to sort of put this all back together again, I said, well, I'm going to go through all my cassettes and I'll see what I've still got from the old days when him and I just used to mess around there. And I found that musical track for that song and sent it to him, along with some others that him and I had stored up, and which were actually used on the new album. And then John heard it and heard the track, mm-hmm. and while we were making the album, for some reason that phrase, I'll have some of that, was like used on a daily basis.
Okay.
And, I said to John, why don't you sit down with the track and see what you can come up with as far as lyrics, and maybe we can cut this song as well and put it on the album. And of course, it turned out to be the title of not only of the album, but song. So it kind of took on a life of its own, out of nowhere, really. Because when we started the album, we weren't really considering that track. But as the album went on, it kind of just grew out of the sessions and finally made it to the album, and we ended up calling it I'll Have Some of That.
All right, well, let's check it out right now. This is the Babies with I'll Have Some of That right here on Inside the CMS Studio.